Hi everyone, welcome to THT, and today we are going to talk about Legend of the Force, spoiler, first impression, part 5. So, as usual, this video is sponsored by Card Market, the biggest marketplace to buy and sell cards in Europe. And before we start the video, I just wanted to let you know that I'll be casting the UK Game Expo alongside Ben Fitz for OPE, so really looking forward to that. It's going to be remotely casted on the Twitch channel of the Organized Play event. So if you want to hear my commentaries, please go tune in, and it's going to be a lot of fun. There's going to be 2 highly competitive tournaments on Friday and Saturday, and then a Sunday top 8 tournament that will gather pretty much the people who won the game the first day and the second day. So that's going to be really exciting. And yeah, so moving on now to my first impression. As usual, those are first impressions. I haven't played with most of those cards, so I have full rating for those. Not excited, not sure, good, and amazing. Starting off with the first card, the Legacy Run. So the Legacy Run is a unit that has, in my opinion, the most powerful when defeated effect that we've ever seen in the entire game. 6 damage divided as you choose among enemy units, and that's obviously kind of the same thing as Palpatine, the first Palpatine from Sparkle Radiant, the Palpatine unit. So it is significant, but it comes into play a lot earlier, which is a big deal. We basically got this effect here for 5. So if you have a way to sack this card right from turn 4, you can basically benefit from that effect very early on in the game. It's very significant. So obviously you don't get a 6/6 overwhelm. You have to sacrifice your 3/3 to make it happen. But even then, it's still a very powerful effect. So it's a card that would have been amazing if Triple Dark Raid was still legal. Thankfully, it is not. Actually, no. Triple Dark Raid bounces card back in the main, so never mind. But still would be if you're playing like a deck like if you were playing Kandoku and you had a way to sacrifice it, then it would just be amazing with Triple Dark Raid. But anyway, Triple Dark Raid is banned, so which deck can really run this card? So in my opinion, there are 2 decks that can potentially run this card. Basically, I would think about like a control version of Palpatine, or even a control version of Dooku, even though it has not really been a thing. So the decks that can basically sacrifice this unit and get a benefit from it. In this case, if you combine this with Palpatine, you can deal 6 damage and then deal 1 extra damage. So that's 7 damage in total, and draw a card. That's very powerful. And it's exactly the kind of card that this kind of deck needed to stabilize the game early on. It's the kind of deck that struggles sometimes to really kill units definitely in order to save themselves for the later stage of the game. So this could be something that we definitely could see as a pseudo kind of barrage thing. I think could be very powerful. The second categories of deck that would benefit from a card like this is obviously any Thrawn decks. So the Thrawn from Jump to Light Speed, and the Thrawn How Unfortunate. And this Thrawn is, in my opinion, heavily benefit from this card simply because it can trigger the when defeated effect twice. And I can tell you, this is not overkill. There's a massive difference between 6 damage to any divided unit and 12 damage. 6 damage is like, it will get rid of like a small board, or it will get rid of like a board where a lot of units are very damaged. 12 damage basically wipes almost any board that comes out at this stage of the game. That's a huge difference. So obviously the Thrawn don't naturally have their own way to sacrifice their own units, so they will have to be combined with a way for you to sacrifice the Legacy Run. That there will be a Merciless Contest, or it can be so Merciless Contest. You can literally trigger, make your opponent kill a unit, then deal the 12 damage however you want to finish the job. Or you can do the other way around, where you deal the 12 damage and then you would want to do the sacrificing effect first, because you would clear a unit that is basically fully healed. I actually don't know about this. Yeah, actually, yeah, if there's something very large in play, you can actually, I think you can trigger the when defeated effect first, and then do the... No, I think you have to do... Yeah, sorry, I'm saying bullshit. I think you have to do the sacrificing effect first. But anyway, that's very powerful. And there's also like it goes right on curve if you're going for Vigilance. So if you're playing Vigilance for 6, you go Legacy Run for 4, and then you can literally play Vigilance you can kill your own legacy run, heal yourself 5, and then wipe the board. So basically, you can literally just wipe the entire board and heal your base in one action, which is very, very powerful. Obviously, the elephant in the room that I haven't talked about yet is the obvious combination with Sneak Attack. Sneak Attack, you basically play this card for 1 less, and then you get to attack with it right away, and then it will die at the end of the round. So this is incredibly powerful. So let's say there's a space unit on the other side. You're basically spending 4 resource to deal 15 damage, because there's a 3 damage of the legacy run attacking, and then there's the 12 damage after that of the when defeated trigger, and you do this as early as turn 3. This is insane against deck like Sabine, because being able to wipe the entire board so early in the game is such a powerful synergy. And yes, you need the 2 cards in hand for this to work, but it's so powerful. I think Sneak Attack is going to be in every single deck that's going to run Legacy Run, is going to be wanting to run 3 copies of Sneak Attack. And yeah, that's going to be very, very scary. So I think this is very strong. This is the kind of card that could put Thrawn 4 on the map as a control or mid-range deck, depending on which version is going to be run. Most likely it's going to be a control deck, because you're going to be running like a blue, yellow. You can run the deck a bit more mid-rangey, or you can even run the deck hard control. But this card is single-handedly going to make Thrawn 4 on the map, I think, in the meta. And I think it's going to make a very, very big difference in the meta. And that's why I rate it amazing. Because I think this card, even though it is very specialized and is only going to be played in a very specific kind of deck, it's going to have such a big impact on those few decks that I think it's going to be... I think it's worth the rating of amazing, because it's going to have an impact on them. It's not just going to be a good card, it's going to have an impact on the meta. It's going to have a huge impact on the meta. Next, we got Aurra Sing. And Aurra Sing is very, very good. She is, first of all, like a 1/4 for 2 raid 2 is already by itself very powerful, because now we're talking about a card that is basically a 3/4 when she's attacking. That's really, really strong. A 3/4 when she's attacking is really nice, because it means she can kill Battlefield Marine without dying. And the fact that she's hidden is also not irrelevant, because generally speaking, the inconvenience of raid units is that they are really good when they're attacking, but they're really bad when they're defending. And at least Aurra Sing, you know that she is likely to get at least 1 attack off before she gets attacked, because she's hidden and can't be attacked when she gets played. So I think this is a really beneficial. And the other very relevant part about this card is Underworld and Bounty Hunter. So Underworld is obviously very important for Cad Bane. She's in the right color combination for Cad Bane, and she's also Bounty Hunter, which matters for if you play Toro Calica. You can use cheap Bounty Hunters, especially, are really good, because then you can play Bounty Hunter, damage her, untap Toro Calica, and so on. And you can do this multiple times, and you can dish out huge amount of damage. So cheap Bounty Hunters are really, really strong in combination with Toro Calica. And then finally, she is Bounty Hunter. So she combines very well with Relentless Pursuit. She's 4 health and she's hidden. So and with the additional shield from Relentless Pursuit, she can really capture units and keep them for a really long time captured. So there's just a lot of things to like about this card. It's just a really, really solid card. Is it just gonna change the meta? I don't know, but it's a really, really good card. So for me, I give this a thumbs up. We're also talking about a very good 2-drop in a color combination that didn't have access to really strong 2-drops. Cad Bane's deck generally don't have very powerful 2-drops in there at their disposal. So having access to this other 2-drop is really, really big. So it's a really, really good card, and it's going to be in every single Cad Bane at the very least, and I think it's going to be in most yellow-black deck. I don't think it's an auto-include, but it's a very, very good card, so thumbs up for this. Next we got Drengir Spawn. Okay, I don't understand who designed that card and thought that this card was going to be good. Like, this card is so incredibly bad, especially for rare. It just doesn't make any sense. So first of all, we get a 3/3/4/4, which is an abysmal stat line. Nobody is, like, this is really, really bad. You need to have an amazing ability to make up for such horrible stats. He has Overwhelm, which is pretty much irrelevant because he has so few attacks. He has 3 attacks. Overwhelm really don't matter most of the time. And then he has the whenever you need to attack and defeat a unit, so not only you need to attack the unit, you also need to defeat it. You give to put an experience token equal to the defeated unit's cost. The problem is, good luck defeating a unit that good luck that defeating a unit with only 3 attack. Most of the units in the game, especially since in this expansion we're seeing a lot of 2-4, we even see a 2-5 for 2. So even killing 2 drops cards that are twice cheaper than the Drengir Spawn are going to be very difficult to kill with this card. And if you do, okay, you're getting some experience token, but like it's only basically making up for the damage that you took attacking that unit anyway, so it's not really making the unit that more survivable. Obviously, you're supposed to put an upgrade on this to make it any good. If you put an upgrade, then killing units and killing large unit becomes a little bit better, but it is so expensive and so easy to counter. This is just a really, really bad card. It's also very, very slow and very easy to play around, so it's really, really bad card. It might be one of the worst cards we've seen this set. Moving on, we got the Grand Inquisitor, the new leader. So, the Grand Inquisitor is kind of nice. So he's 4th Imperial Inquisitor, 3 very relevant traits. Unfortunately, he's not a 5th, so no combination with this. No combination with the new unit. With the new Malachi. So Malak, I think, is the name of the unit that basically comes ready if you have a 5th deployed leader. So this is something that is very. So yeah, but so. The ability is very similar to the ability that Jin Urso had in set 1. I don't know if you remember, you could attack with a unit and give a -1 attack bonus to the unit you're attacking. This kind of does the same, but it does a -2 malice instead of -1, but you have to lose the force to be able to use it, which is a significant cost. And then the other thing, the cool thing though, is like you can use the force basically to use the ability, attack with a unit, and then once you defeated that unit, and then you attack with the force, and if you're attacking with the force unit, you get the force back if you're playing one of those 20 HP base, which is kind of nice. The leader deploy is surprisingly good. He comes out at 3-5 shielded. In my opinion, 3-5 shielded is actually better than 3-7. So really, really solid stats. And then the ability becomes slightly better because you don't need to require the force. So what can we say about Grand Inquisitor? In my opinion, his leader ability in constructed is terrible. We also saw that Jin Urso basically saw 0 plane constructed, and that was in set 1 when things were, units and leaders were a lot less competitive. So there is no chance that this leader is going to see any plane competitive. The ability is really too bad. The leader deploy is okay, but I don't think it's good enough to make up for the lack of... so in my opinion, as far as if you're talking about this as a constructed leader, I don't think he's good. However, I think he's going to be pretty good in draft because obviously in draft everybody's going to be playing those 28 HP base to get the force. Getting the force is going to be super easy, and the ability in draft is a lot better, and then the leader deploy is going to be really nice. So I think he's good in draft, but he's terrible in constructed, and obviously this is a first impression. I'm rating the card in regards to constructed, so I'm going to give this a bad rating because this is a rating related to constructed, Premier, full Star Wars Unlimited. Next, we got Crushing Blow, which allows you to defeat a non-leader unit that costs 2 or less. So, this is obviously one of those 3 resource removal. We saw, of course, the cards like Perilous Position or what's it called? Perilous Position or I forgot the name. The guy that does -2/-2 and heal for 2. Anyway, those kind of cards that cost 3 resource, that kill stuff that are significantly smaller, but they kill them. So yeah, it's kind of like those cards do find utility because it turns out that in Star Wars Limited there's not that many cheap removal in the game. You got basically Power the Dark Side, Merciless Contest. If you're playing red, you also have Open Fire, but then if you don't play, there's just not a lot of cheap removal in Star Wars Limited. So even though the card is pretty underwhelming, paying 3 to kill something that costs 2 is very underwhelming. There's actually some situation in some decks that actually wants this, and those decks are obviously kind of hard control decks. So in my opinion, if you're running a hard control blue deck, there is a chance you might need that card. It's not really the card that you want to play, it's the card that you need to play. And I'm giving you an example. So basically, in order to be able to always have a removal on turn 2 against your opponent's turn 1 play, you kind of need to have 9 of them. Currently, you got access to Power Dark Side, you got access to Merciless Contest, you got access to Perilous Position, but Perilous Position is not a real removal, it just like kind of weakens the unit. and is not going to kill much stuff, at least in the history of the game. It's a card that is better to use later on in the game on larger targets in order to prevent them from attacking, and then you can then finish them off later on with something like a takedown. Crushing Blow doesn't do allows you to kill the unit outright, which I think is beneficial. So it's also interesting that it says defeat a non-leader unit that costs 2 or less. That implies that at some point we're gonna get some 2-cost leader. But yeah, I think Crushing Blow. I don't see this card being played in a yellow. I think yellow will have access to other cards like Waylay. It's a card that you're gonna be playing in a double blue hard control deck because you are missing out on some early game removal. So everybody plays 2 drops, so it's likely that you're gonna find a target for it. So I don't think it's a terrible card. Contrary to many people have said, this card is terrible. It's not a terrible card. I think there's certain type of decks that are gonna need to play card like these. This is obviously going to be the meta depending, and we don't know if double blue hard control is going to be a thing, and if it is it going to need Crushing Blow or not, remains to be seen. But it is definitely a card that could be played, so I'm going to give this a maybe, even though I'm not very confident it's going to see a lot of play. I think there's a chance it might. Next we got Purge Trooper. So Purge Trooper is basically sort of a Death Trooper, but specialized against Forced unit. Yes, we're going to see a lot more Forced units being played in this set, compared to the last set, but I don't think there are going to be enough of them to make Purge Trooper consistent. And even whenever it's played against Force, it's only a slightly better version of Death Trooper of Death Trooper. So Death Trooper is slightly worse, but is universal, works against anything. While this is only working against Force unit, I don't see any reason to be playing this card. I think it simply just is too situational. So basically the floor of this card is very low because you get a 4-2 for 3, which is really bad stat line, and the ceiling for the card, if you get to actually kill a Force unit, is not like super high. It's not, even in the right situation, the card is not amazing. So for me, it's not going to be, I don't think this card is going to be played in Constructed at least. Might be really good in Draft though. Next we got Nihil Marauder. This card is really nice. It's basically, once again, one of those 3 drops that comes out as a 4/5 whenever it's attacking, which is really nice, especially if we're going to be in a meta where there's going to be a lot of people playing 2/4s. 2/4s are going to be a lot more popular this set, a lot more frequent this set than they were set 1, so Nihil Marauder can actually kill them, which is very nice. It's also Underworld and Trooper, which is relevant for a Cad Bane deck. So yeah, I think this card has some legs. And the cool thing is, like, if you are combining this with Cad Bane, let's say your opponent is playing a 3/5, you can play Nihil Marauder, ping that unit using Cad Bane, and then you can attack with Nihil Marauder to finish it off. So you can basically trade 3/5s and then stay alive at the same time, which I think is very powerful. So we know, of course, Raid, the units that have Raid are very susceptible to be attacked. Of course, the fact that Nihil Marauder can be attacked and killed without ditching almost any damage back is kind of a big downside, but I think the upside of having a 4/5 for 3 on attack is high enough that I think this card is going to see play. So I'm going to give this a thumbs up. I think it's going to see play. Obviously, competition for 3-drop is becoming very, very fierce. But I think there's a world where you can play this card over. So I don't know if this card sees plays over the Boba Fett Disintegrator. Maybe it's an addition to Boba Fett Disintegrator. I think depending on the meta, I could definitely see this card played over the Boba Fett Disintegrator. Like, it's not impossible. Or maybe there's going to be a 2-2 split. Like, I think this card can see play. It's a good card. Moving on, we got a Nameless Terra, which is one of the other anti-Force cards that we're seeing here. This is a 3/3 for 3, which is a horrible stat line. And he has a when play to exhaust a Force unit, and on attack it can make a unit lose the Force trait. So on attack, making an enemy unit lose a Force trait is extremely situational. Yes, there are a few things that care about Force trait, but overall, the problem is, like, most of the time your opponent will have the opportunity to attack with his Force unit, or play whatever card needs a Force trait, like a Force throw, before you get a chance to attack, making this extremely situational. The when play is like when you may exhaust a Force unit. That's not a very strong when play. If the card was a 3/3 for 3 that actually exhausts when it comes to play, that would be kind of okay, but not amazing. The fact that he has the Force restriction makes the card so much more situational. I don't think this is going to see plane constructed. I think it's too narrow once again. Yes, we're going to see a lot more force units in this set, but there's still going to be a minority among units, making this card very situational and with our horrible stats, unfortunately. Just a little break to let you know that you can pick up Force Lightning for 2.46 euro on Card Market. I think this is the card that's going to see a lot more play right now. We were really missing out on a lot of Force Enablers in the villainy aspect. I think with this set we're going to see a lot more stronger villainy card, making Force Lightning a far more powerful card. So it is a card that I think is good to pick up now because it might go up in price a lot once the expansion release. I think it's a very strong card in the new set. Next we got a new leader, and this leader is very interesting. It is the first 9-cost leader in the entire game. So I'm gonna talk about it a little bit here. So there's quite a few things to think about. First of all, Avarress is the leader that allows you to get the Force unconditionally every single turn, without the need of playing a 25 HP or a 28 HP base. That's a very, very big deal. And to me, that's the core of what makes this leader special, is the ability to unconditionally get the Force. So the big question for this card is there enough Force synergies or Force card that are really powerful in the set to make it worth running this leader with this leader ability? Because here's the thing, she has that ability, but she doesn't have another leader ability. That means that in order to make up for the lack of leader ability, she's going to need every single turn to have a good Force payoff to capitalize on. So that's basically about the strengths. She has an interesting deployment where she gets to deploy if the number of resources you control plus the number of time you use the Force this phase is 9 or more, you can deploy that leader. So basically that means that if you use the Force, you make the deployment 1 turn earlier, basically. So I think realistically, even though that does sometimes require you to do a couple of actions before deploying your leader, which sometimes can be annoying, realistically you should be able to deploy your leader on 8 every single time, because all you need is get the Force with the leader's ability and then play anything that's going to require to play a Force, which I'm assuming you're going to be planting a lot of if you are running a deck running her. There's also the potential of eventually getting her on 7. So let's say you've decided to use her ability on the turn before, so you already start the game with a Force. You play an ability or play a card that spends the Force, then you use her ability, and then again you are doing. So you can basically deploy her on 7. It's a little bit more complicated, and it requires you to have 2 cards or 2 abilities that spend the Force, which I think is far from guaranteed. Then there's of course the possibility you can deploy on 6 if you are playing a base that gives you the Force on top of her giving you the Force, and you have 3 cards or abilities that spends the Force that turn, then you can deploy her on 6. But I think that's pretty much Christmas land. I don't think that's ever gonna be reliable. So what can we say about it? First of all, the idea to try to play this in combination, I saw a lot of people kind of speculating, oh yeah, if you play this with a Force base, you can deploy her on 6, no. I think this is a trap. I think that most of the time, getting up to 3 units that is going to be spending the Force in 1 turn to deploy on 7 is on 6 is extremely unlikely to happen, and I think it also defeats the purpose of the leader. What is the point of playing a leader that gives you the Force for free if you're going to be playing a base that gives you 25 HP or 28 HP that's gonna give you the Force as well? Obviously, the whole point of having a leader that gives you the Force is that you don't have to play those bases that gives you the Force, and you can play a base that gives you 30 HP or more. Which is very important, especially for a leader that does deploy quite late. So in my opinion, trying to play a base that gives you the Force is a trap, and you should be playing this leader with the normal 30 HP base, because that's the whole point of the leader, to not have to play a base that gives you the Force, because you already have the ability that does so. So in this context, obviously that means that this leader will never deploy faster than on 7. And most of the time it's going to deploy on 8. So that's something that you need to understand whenever you are talking about the leader deploy. So let's talk about the leader deploy a little bit. So basically, leader deploy is a 410 So basically it's Palpatine, but without the ability and without the take control ability. So it's obviously a lot worse than Palpatine. She does get plus 4 attack and overwhelm, which is very, very important. But there's a tricky part here. So if you are using Avar and you're getting the Force, and then you play a card that spends the Force, and then you get to deploy the leader. So basically, here's the sequence that doesn't work with her. If you are deploying her on 7, she's always going to be 410. Because, as I said, you're playing a base that doesn't give you Force. And you're probably not playing any cards in your deck that gives you the Force. Because, once again, what's the point of playing those cards? Because you have a leader that gives you the Force all the time. So, if you want to deploy on 7, you get Avarress on the turn before, gives you the Force. Play a card that spends the Force. Use your ability to get the Force again. Play another card that spends the Force. Deploy on 7. If you do that sequence, you will never get the Force back because now your leader is deploy, she's 410, and you no longer have the ability that gives you the Force. So there's no other way for you to get the Force unless, once again, you're playing a card that gives you the Force. But I don't think that's a good idea to play those cards in counter deck anyway. So pretty much I would say that deploying on 8 is probably the wiser move, where you get the Force on a turn before, you play a card that spends the Force, and then you deploy on 8 and you spend the Force, and then you use the ability so you get the Force. So, and then you deploy her, and she's an 8 and overwhelm. So basically, to summarize all this demonstration, she's either going to be a 410 for 7, or she's going to be a 810 for 8. Basically, 8 overwhelm for 8. So it is obviously a bit tricky. So she's kind of a tricky leader. In my opinion, I think the leader deploy is very weak. I think that whenever you are deploying a leader that late, you want that leader to have an impact on the game that is more than just putting a big butt on the board. You need something that does way more than that. So I think our leader deploy is very, very weak, and I think that's going to be ultimately what's going to prevent her from being a competitive leader. However, and this is something I really want to emphasize on, is that our leader ability has immense potential if we can find enough really strong payoff for having the Force, and having this unconditional way to get the Force is just incredible. So in my opinion, it's going to depend on the amount of support. Right now, I don't think there's quite enough. I think there's like really one big card I really love the Force in heroism. That's obviously the 1/4 that like the new like dispatcher guy, where he gets to play card. If you have the Force, you can spend the Force and you can play card unit from your hand with a 2 discount. So this guy is really strong with her. Then there's the 5/4 that does deploy, gives you a free resource whenever he has the Force. But yeah, basically your entire deck is gonna need to be made of Force with it. And right now there's not enough of them to make a real deck and really abuse the ability. So if you have a way to abuse the ability, I think she can be strong. If you don't, then she's gonna be weak. The entire question with this leader is, can the leader ability make up for the weak deployment? Is kind of like the whole point of the card. Okay, so for me it's a maybe. As I said, she does something even though I might think a leader is weak, just the fact that she does something very, very unique is enough for me to give it like a maybe treatment, because as I said, we don't know the amount of Force card. This card just gives you the Force like for free every single turn. I think that's without limit, and I think this is kind of so unique that I think it's worth considering if we can build an entire deck where Force is relevant every single turn. Next, moving on, we got Jedi Temple Guard. So Jedi Temple Guard is one of those units with a lot of keywords, but not a lot of stats. And something you gotta understand with keyword, that was true in Magic, it's also true in Star Wars Unlimited, is like keywords scale up depending on your stats. I think Restore is an exception though, because Restore is a fixed amount. But basically anything Ambush, anything Overwhelm, the more stats you have, the more value this keyword is gonna have. And here's the problem, is that we have a unit that has very weak stats, a lot of very strong traits. So Restore to Ambush, very strong traits, especially it's a good combination between the two because you get to restore right away as you ambush. But the stats are so incredibly weak that the ambush doesn't matter anymore, because now with the 2/4 you really can't kill anything. there's really not much in the game that has 2 health. And if there is something that has 2 health, it's probably going to have a lot of attack, meaning that you're probably going to die on your attack in, which means that you're basically going to be trading a 4 drop for something like a 2 or 3 drop maximum and heal a little bit, which is not even worth it. And obviously, it's only a ground unit, so it's only worked for ground ambush. So for me, this card is pretty bad. It just simply doesn't have enough stats for what it's trying to accomplish. It's not really going to kill anything. So it's a good way to kind of heal stuff. But when it comes out, whenever it's ambushing, it's more like it's likely to die as a result for it. And spending 4 just to deal 2 damage to something and healing is just simply not worth it, in my opinion. So not a good card, in my opinion. Then we got Jedi Vector, which is another pretty bad card. It is basically a conditional Alliance X-Wing with a 2/3 for 2 in space, which is pretty average. I think it's been seeing play for a very long time because he has the Rebel trait. But Jedi Vector, unfortunately, is not good. Is not good at all, because it's basically just a weaker version of that, because you need a condition to actually make it into a 2/3. It can be a 3/3 if you get a lightsaber upgrade, but that's once again a kind of Christmas land. How likely you have to have a Jedi and a lightsaber in play at the same time alongside the Jedi Vector? Very unlikely. So it's pretty much never going to be a 3/3. It can be a 2/3 relatively easily, but even as a 2/3, it's pretty terrible. It's just a horrible card. There's no reason to play this. Moving on, we got Priestess of the Force. A very interesting card. A lot of stats, a 6/8 stat line. That's all, at the very least, it's always gonna, if you use the Force as you play it, it's always gonna be shielded as well. And it can also give shield to up to 5 units. So the ability is kind of tricky, because obviously you very rarely have that many units on the board, so you're pretty much never going to give a shield to 5 different units. However, I think if you can give it to shield units to 2 or 3 units, it can already be kind of worth it. But those units needs to have Sentinel. So I don't think this card is really good, because there's 2 reasons for this. First of all, the competition for 7 drop is insane. There's many strong 7 drop in this game. It's very difficult. Unless you're playing a double blue deck, the competition for 7 drop is insane. Like, there's so many strong 7 drops in this game. It's very hard to find space for something that is maybe a little bit more situational. The second problem I have with this card is how situational it is. It requires you to spend the Force, and it is required to have some units in play. Because if you're playing this card just as a 6/8 Force for 7, that's not good enough. We're talking about a 7 drop with no immediate impact on the game. The only reason for the only way to give this card an immediate impact on the board, a significant immediate impact on the board, is if you have a Sentinel unit in play and you give a shield to a Sentinel unit. That's really the only way. So I don't think this card is good enough to see constructed play. I don't think it's unplayable. As I said, if you can build a deck that just has so many Sentinels that also happens to be using the Force, and you're playing double blue, like maybe in a double blue Falls deck, there's a way to play this card, but I think it's niche enough that I'm comfortable giving it this rating. Then we got Sorcerer's Blast. This basically allows you to deal 3 for 1. It's literally a lightning bolt, if you talk in magic term, but you have to use the Force to make it happen. So the problem with this card, obviously, is the fact that this card doesn't do anything if you don't have the Force. If this card was like 1, deal 2 damage, and then if you use the Force with 3 damage, then it would be just a kind of a Daring Raid. So Daring Raid deals damage to both unit and base, which is a big deal. So if you would have designed Sorcerer's Blast to deal 2 damage to a unit only, so kind of a worse version of Daring Raid, but then can be upgraded to 3 damage to a unit if you have the Force, then this card would be a lot nicer. The problem the fact that it doesn't do anything if you don't have the Force, that's a big of a bummer. I think it is a significant upside if you have a deck that can consistently get the Force, which we know there's plenty of ways to do this in the game. I think this card is good. So if you're playing, I already forgot the name of that leader. What's the name of that leader? Yeah, Avarress. If you're running Avarress Red, like, you should probably run this card, because 3 damage for 1 is a really good rate, and in this deck you can very consistently have the Force every turn. So in that type of deck, I really like it. In other kind of decks, I think that once again, the fact that it doesn't do anything if you don't have the Force is a very big downside. And yeah, so For me, I'm gonna give this a maybe. I don't think it's a bad card. I just think that it has a it's gonna need some specific deck for this to work. I would have been a lot more confident about the card once again if there were like an effect if you don't have the Force and just the effect gets upgraded. Next we got Vernestra Row, and this card is really nice. So 3/4 for 3 is not horrible, but it's not a great stat line nowadays. Nowadays, pretty much all the 3 drops are basically 3/5s. It used to be kind of a unique unicorn thing that Boba Disintegrator had. Now it became a standard. There's so many 3/5s, very strong 3/5 for 3 in the game now. But if you are 3/4, you can make up for this by simply having a very strong ability, and that's exactly what Vernestra has. If you use the Force, she gets to come into play ready. So she's basically a Millennium Falcon on the ground. So obviously, using the Falcon as this kind of cost that you have to pay every turn for her to work, while she has to use the Force. So you need to be able to use the Force deck. Basically, this card is going to be played in every single Force deck that runs yellow, especially if they are aggressive decks or mid-range decks. She's going to be really good. Even if you're playing like a semi-mid-range control deck, you're going to be playing her because Battlefield Marine comes into play, you play her, she comes to play ready, kill that dude. Obviously, you need to have the Force when it happens, so you need to either play Avarress, or you need to be running the 25 HP base that gives you the Force every turn. Or you need to be playing a turn 1, play that full health, and play the 25 HP blue base. Another cool thing that I like about her is that she spends the Force with her when play ability, but then if you're playing a 20 HP base, she can get back the Force when she attacks, which is very nice because she's Force, obviously. She has full health, so if you're playing the blue base, she will give you the Force back as well if she's still fully healed. So yeah, she's also a Jedi, means that she can carry General's Blade. So yeah, no, there's a lot of things to like. It's just a really solid card. It's gonna see play in every single yellow heroism deck that use the Force. Basically, it's as simple as that. Moving on, we got the Jedi Starfighter. So comes out as a 1/4 for 2. 1/4 for 2 for a space unit is kind of a bad stat line because usually one of the advantages of playing space units is that they are usually less contested than ground units, so they can kind of dish out damage. But the problem is like this unit has so little health that you can basically ignore it, and it's not going to have much impact on you. The on-attack ability is very specialized because it needs to be a space unit, and even if you do trigger it, it only deals 2 damage in total, which is simply just not good enough. So yeah, I guess it's pretty good against Vader that puts token and stuff, but yeah, it's so situational. I don't think it's a very good card at all. Then we got Mace Windu. So Mace Windu is kind of like a wrecker, but instead of having to destroy a resource, you're basically using the Force. It does 4 damage instead of 5, but this 4 damage can be either on the ground or in space, which is very relevant. And then it's not a 7/6 overwhelm, it's a 6/6 overwhelm. So, but it has obviously a lot better traits than Wrecker has, being a 4th Jedi Republic. All those traits are pretty relevant in Star Wars Unlimited. So, what can we say about Mace Windu? Well, very simple. I think this card is going to see play in every deck that has the Force, especially a deck that has ability to give it ambush. We know that Wrecker is much better with ambush. I don't think this card depends entirely on ambush to be played. You can play it just as a 6/6 overwhelm that deals 4 damage to something when it comes to play, which I think is more than enough. But obviously with ambush, it's even better, especially if you're playing an aggro deck. So an aggro Force deck is going to be really powerful because you're going to be able to get like, okay, I'm going to deal 4 damage to your dude, and then I'm going to be attacking it, and then I'm going to dish out huge amount of damage overwhelm as well as killing your units. This is a combo that is well known from Wrecker, and this card is really similar to Wrecker, and Wrecker being one of the best card that we've ever seen in Sabine. And the fact that once again, so yeah, I think this card is really strong in that type of decks. Yeah, if you're able to use the Force, and once again we have the same kind of advantage that if you're running a 20 HP base, you can basically spend the Force on the when play ability, and then if you are ambushing with him, you can kind of get the Force back immediately. So currently there's 3 ways to give it ambush that I think are going to be accessible for Aerosm. There is obviously Energy Conversion Lab, which I think is going to become a lot more... Energy Conversion Lab is getting a huge boost this set. We're going to talk about it a little bit later on, but the other one is obviously Timely Intervention. Those all are both green, and there's also a yellow card that allows you to play a Force unit from your hand. And give it ambush. So it's basically a timely intervention that only works for force units available on yellow. So this is and you also, I think, can reduce the damage taken by the unit that's attacking, which is very nice. So yeah, I think this card on is also going to be another way to give this card ambush available in yellow if you want to play this card in yellow. But once again, this card does not need ambush to be good. It's a card that's already very good. So I think it's just a very solid card. It's nothing crazy that we've never seen before, but it is a really powerful card, and it's going to be a thumbs up. It's a huge payoff, once again, to get the 4th in those red colors. Next, we got Knight of Ren. So Knight of Ren is a 4/4 for 3. It's not the first 4/4 for 3 we saw. We have the General Grievous from set 3. Back then, we were a little bit kind of thinking that 4/4 for 3 was going to be a super cool stat line that's going to be really powerful. Unfortunately, hasn't been really the case. 4/4 hasn't been better than 3/5. 3/5 has actually been better than 4/4 because obviously ping plus talking down is a big deal, and most of the units in the game have either 3 health or they jump all the way up to 5 health. There's just not that many 4 health units in the game in the meta right now. But this might very well change because now 2/4s are going to be a lot more popular. We've seen all those great 2/4s being printed for both villainy and heroism, and I think this might make 4/4 for 3 a much better stat line than it used to be. So obviously it's a 4/4 for 3 stat line with no ability whatsoever, but it's also available on green-black, which gives you more hits for your Vaders, which is relevant. So I don't think this card is unplayable. I think it's going to depend on the meta. I think there's a world where you could be playing this card in order to kind of get rid of all those 2/4s, especially if you're playing a double green villainy deck, which we know those cards are really starving for options in a lot of cases. So I'm going to give this card a maybe. I don't think it's amazing, but I think there's a world where this is play. Then we have Loth-Wolf. So Loth-Wolf is a purely defensive card that is a 3/3 Sentinel for 2 that cannot never attack. So there's a lot of things to like about this card. First of all, 3/3 for 2 Sentinel is insane. It's amazing. It allows you to basically protect yourself. Heroism had a lot of problem in the early stages of the game at dealing with 3/3s because most of the good heroism, blue heroism cards are usually 2/3s. We talk about those or they have like really weak 1/4 stat line. So blue white, but any blue decks, double blue decks, they're really weak in the early stage of the game. They have a lot of trouble defending themselves in the early stage of the game. Loth-Wolves really fixes that issue as it obviously comes into play, will block the 3/3 of your opponent, even if you don't have the initiative, which is great. So that's really nice. There's obviously a lot of very powerful synergies with this card. So obviously the fact it's a creature means that you can go Loth-Wolf turn 1, and you can go turn 2 Ezra with the new 3/5 Ezra, and when the Ezra attack, you can give an experience token to the creature, which is nice. So any 2-drop creature that is available in the same colors as Ezra is automatically gonna be better. So that's very nice. Another thing that I really like is obviously how it synergizes with a number of leaders. So it's really great with Chancellor Palpatine. Chancellor Palpatine basically wants to have blue-white units dying early on in the game. So they were already playing those awkward 3/2 for 2s, but obviously having the 3/3 for 3, 3/3 for 2 that's almost guaranteed going to die to an upcoming attack, and basically just allows you to trigger Chancellor Palpatine is so incredibly valuable. So having a way to protect yourself, getting a guarantee heroism unit dying so you can flip Chancellor Palpatine on the dark side is absolutely brilliant. And even in later stage of the game, having a very cheap Sentinels you can kind of jam in here just to protect yourself is so incredibly valuable. This card is going to be amazing in Chancellor Palpatine. It's also going to be really good in Kazuda. So Kazuda, of course, you can turn off the downside, so it'll be a 3/3 Sentinels, and whenever it's time to attack with it, you can simply just use Kazuda, and then it becomes a Battlefield Marine with Sentinel that can attack the opponent. So I think blue Kazuda, we already talked about this with Goblo, which is a 5/5 for 3. I think there's a lot of great stuff for Kazuda blue in this set. So Kazuda blue, there's definitely a deck that can be built here, and that's going to be super interesting. So I cannot wait to see this deck being able to perform. It was already playing the shuttle, the 3/5 in space for 2, so it's going to have some of the best 2-drop in the game, because this deck is basically going to have the Fireball, which is a 3/3 for 2 in space. Now we have a 3/3 for 2 on the ground, and we also have the 3/5 for 2 in space. So this turn 1 play are going to be absolutely insane. And then with Hobgoblin Gobbler 5/5 for 3 in on the ground, and we are going to have the Ezra 3/5 in space, and then we have the usual falcons and buffs and stuff, the yellow stuff that is being given to you. That's also amazing. So there's just a lot of good stuff going on for Kazuo, so I'm going to be exciting to see how this deck performs. This might just be too many units with downsides. The ability of Kazuda might become just too many units to kind of turn off. We'll see if that actually happens like this, but I think it should be fine, but we'll see. It's gonna this is the kind of thing that only in testing you're gonna be able to really determine. So I'm gonna give this a thumbs up. Obviously you need to specialize deck to run this card, but if you do, this card is really, really good in a number of decks. Next we got Martian Row. Martian Row is very interesting. It basically doubles the effectiveness of all of your raid cards, and we saw a lot of powerful raids in this set. We got, of course, the one has the 2/4 raid 2 that now basically gets attack 4. There's also the raid 3, which now become attack 6. There's just a number of, there's also the 2-drop that has 3 raids. So there's like a number of raid cards that I think would really benefit from this card. So basically the elephant in the room with this card is like, this unit only has an immediate impact on the game if you happen to have a lot of raid unit in play. So we're talking about a 6-drop that only situationally is going to have an impact on the game. But if it does, the impact is really, really big. So you need a relatively wide board of ready units. So that means it's kind of like, feels a little bit like a win more card, because if you have a lot of raid units in play, you are kind of already winning the game in a lot of cases. So this card kind of comes down as a kind of a win more card. But it has really big stats. 6/7 for 6, meaning that even if it doesn't have an immediate impact on the game, it can still be like a threat by itself. And once again, if you can just so my kind of thought about this card is that obviously I'm expecting to see a very raid focused leader coming into play. If it can kind of deploy at the same time as a very powerful raid leader, so we already have Cad Bane, which has raid 2, would have a raid 4 with this thing, meaning that you are likely to be able to get some amount of value on this. I think it is a card, I think a raid-focused Cad Bane deck is worth a try. And also, we might see a leader that synergizes with raid units as well, that would also add to the playability of this card. So in my opinion, it's a card that has potential. It's going to require a very specific deck to work, and we're going to need to see even more raid unit. We need to really be able to build a deck almost entirely made of raid cards, which is going to be very difficult and also might be very limiting. So there's a lot that needs to happen for this card to be good, but I think if you find the right deck for it, I think it can be an excellent card, so I'm going to give this a maybe. Next we have Gungi. So Gungi is very straightforward. He has the most stats we've ever seen on a 2-drops. Basically the limit that we've seen on 2-drops was kind of 6 stats. 6 stats was kind of the hard limit. We've never seen nothing that has beyond 6 stats for a 2-drop, or if it did, it needed to have significant downside. Gungi is 7 stat on a 2-drop without downside, which is incredible. This unit is incredibly durable. 5 health for a 2-drop is very difficult to take down, and it's going to require so much work for the opponent to get rid of it. And this is going to be valuable for both aggressive deck and for a bit more mid-range decks, because it means that this is a threat. Sometimes having a threat with less attack, but that you know is going to be sticking on the board for a significant amount of time, is more valuable than a unit that has more attack, and it's likely just to dish out more damage throughout the game. So the elephant in the room, of course, if you want to play this in an aggressive Sabine deck, is that this unit does not have the Rebel trait. But this is something we might see some version of Sabine deck kind of go away from the whole Rebel synergies and kind of focus more on just playing the best cards available in each aspect. But I think that, in my opinion, even in the Sabine deck, if you're playing a Sabine deck that is not focused on Rebels, I could see this card being better than the Battlefield Marine, because it's more likely to stay on the battlefield for longer, and that's really valuable. Also, it does not have the Rebel trait, but it does have the Force trait, which is very valuable. It also has a Jedi trait, which means you can play this on turn 1, and then you can play General's Blade on it on turn 2. General's Blade is going to get so much better this set, because we have so many better 2-drop Force that are very likely to survive for the second turn. It's really, really good to enable 4th throw. It's just an amazing card. It also has True Attack, which means that if you're running a Rey green deck, you can actually use the ability of Rey to make this a 3/6 on turn 2, which is incredibly difficult to take down. Rey green is going to get a massive boost from this card, but I believe most green-white deck will run this card in some fashion. It's really good, of course, in any Force deck, because it's going to be a great enabler. You're going to attack 20 HP. Who can prevent you from having a Force unit on the board now that this card exists? It's just so incredible. It's a really, really amazing card. It's going to have a huge impact on the meta to have such a durable unit that early in the game. Last but not least, we got Darth Vader, Twilight of the Apprentice. So this is the new Darth Vader, and as you can expect, Darth Vader is such an iconic character. Every time they're going to be printing a Darth Vader, they're going to at least try to push it to the level where it's going to be competitively playable, and it is definitely the case of this new Darth Vader. So what is cool about it? So this Darth Vader is probably the card in the game that benefits the most from getting ambush. So the big downside of this card is like it doesn't have an immediate impact on the game. It's a 5/6 for 6. Okay, give you a shield to a friendly unit and then to an enemy unit. And once again, giving a shield to a unit has an immediate impact only if you happen to have a Sentinel unit. So pretty much without ambush, this card has no immediate, it's a 6-drop with no immediate impact on the game, which is just not great. Most of the time, any card that costs more than 4, you need it to have some sort of immediate impact on the game. Otherwise, it's not really that good. Obviously, you have a card like Poe, which can be very, but yeah, you're gonna keep in mind that Poe pretty much only sees plays in decks that either can give it ambush relatively consistently or can play him from the discount like the Han 2 blue deck. So that's something that is very important to keep in mind. However, when this card does have ambush, then it becomes absolutely insane. Because then suddenly, on attack, it can defeat a unit with a shield token on it. So obviously the idea is, you play it, you give a shield unit to a unit you want to kill, then you attack and you kill that unit. That is insane. So basically, Darth Vader has kind of this Wrecker vibe where it can basically ambush and kill 2 units at once. So it's going to be able to kill a 5-drop. He can actually give a shield to himself, ambush into a 5-drop, into a unit that has 5 health, and then kill another unit of any size. And the cool thing is like this unit can either be on the ground or in space. So he has this ability to reset a board, also in space, which is incredible. This is something that Wrecker could not do. And Wrecker could only deal 5 damage to that unit. Cannot really kill it outright. While Vader kills it outright, no matter how big it is, it just kills it right away. Which is insane. Even if there's only one unit in play, one large unit, like being able to go Vader, ambush, kill that unit is just incredible as well. So, Darth Vader is, without ambush, it's meh. With ambush, it's one of the strongest cards in the game. It also has Force, Imperial, Sith, 3 very relevant traits. And once again, it's going to, contrary to Wrecker, which is going to take damage from ambushing a unit, this unit is going to be completely fresh as a 5/6, sometimes a 5/6 shielded, which is really incredible. Which is absolutely incredible. Yeah, I cannot say enough good things about this card. This card is really, really, really strong. It's also kind of, once again, the fact that it's a really great comeback mechanic. So now let's talk about what sort of impact this card is going to have on the meta, because this is going to have a strong impact on the meta. The first impact it's going to have is that, obviously, this is a card you want to play in a green, black, blue shell. Because the green is the color that allows you to... It's the color that will give you access to those ambush effects like ECL and Timely Intervention. If you're playing this card in your deck, very likely you want to have 3 Timely Intervention in your deck, and you want to play ECL. But playing ECL is a huge cost, especially for a green deck, because nowadays, of course, people, especially the more slower RAM deck, they prefer to run Data Vault, because the thing is, Data Vault is you need a lot of HP to survive against aggro, and we know that blue-black decks, blue-black-green decks have a tendency to suffer a lot against aggro. So it is kind of a card that is gonna require you to make a lot of deck building sacrifice if you want to put it in your deck. But this is a card that can completely pull you back into the game against any deck once you are a little bit behind, which is huge. So I think the biggest consequence for this is that now green, blue, black decks are going to be running ECL a lot more often than they used to. There's going to be a real fight between Kira Data Vault and Kira ECL. And we don't know which one is going to win, but this is, obviously nowadays, Kira Data Vault is undeniably the better deck. It's not even close. But with the appearance of Darth Vader, this could very well change. This could completely change this could completely change the way we build those kind of decks. Maybe Kira is going to be the thing, maybe it's going to be another leader, but there's definitely going to be an ECL deck based on this card. I can guarantee it. So we're going to see exactly which of those decks prevail. Maybe just having 8 less HP is just too big of a downside and no amount of ECL. But at least now there's a real argument to be playing ECL. Basically, before blue, black, green, there were a couple of good cards like Gideon Ask, Gideon Ask, and also I forgot the name, but Death Trooper as well was kind of nice. There were like a number of cards that were kind of nice with ECL, but now there's just much bigger reason to be playing ECL now with this deck. So that's gonna be interesting. Maybe the deck is gonna have to play more healing. Maybe Krennic is gonna be back in this kind of decks because the healing becomes so important. So there's just a number of questions that we can do. Also keep in mind that this ability works against leaders. That's another really crazy thing. It's like this guy can actually one-shot a leader on top of one-shotting a 5 attack unit. So this card is just amazing. It's obviously I'm gonna give this obviously amazing. It's gonna have a huge impact on the meta because it's gonna change the way we build this deck. And I think it's gonna have a very positive impact on the meta because once again, now Data Vault is everywhere. But now we have a big reason to be running ECL. I also want to mention that there is currently a yellow card that can also give ambush to a unit. So maybe Vader is going to see play in that deck as well, but it's only one card and it's not as good as Timely Intervention. So we'll see exactly how that goes. Oh, and sorry about that. And that's it for this video. So thank you so much for following this video. Please tune in next week next week to watch me cast the UK Game Expo. And I'll see you next time.